Is Christian Dior in an overall panic after Meghan Markle attempts to manifest a deal? And what does this mean for the Sussex's overall prospects in Hollywood as the Spotify deal continues to collapse? They're called out more and more most likely Netflix and others may follow suit, leaving them perhaps even destitute in Hollywood. That's a crazy thing to consider, because just even a couple of years ago when Megxit was first announced, now you could disagree with this, is that Harry and Meghan really had the world at their feet in many ways. People were very much on their side. They thought what they were doing was innovative. They thought that, oh man, they're just doing somewhat a great thing. They're going to be the financially independent. They are going to create something great, you could say, because Meghan Markle was an actress. Maybe they will make it in Hollywood. But just a couple years on, it's become increasingly evident to everyone that Harry and Meghan are a joke, that they never had any desire to really forge their own path. Instead, they just wanted people to give them stuff for doing essentially nothing. And Spotify is the first to very publicly take a step back and go, you know what? We aren't playing that game anymore. Now Dior has called them out, going, no, there is no brand deal, despite what you might say, despite what you are trying to manifest in the public sphere. It ain't happening. And what does this mean for Harry and Meghan's future prospects and how really they have bungled their future so incredibly badly? Because regardless of whether or not you like Harry and Meghan, which I am not a fan of either of them, they really did have the most wonderful opportunity to really actually do something great for themselves. And it proves that really their overall enemy is not the royal family, it's not the public, it's not the media. Their real enemy is themselves and their own laziness. So we're going to go into that today and explore a little bit of that. But if you guys haven't been here to Royal News Network before, my name is Brittany and I provide compelling royal commentary about the latest news and sometimes a little bit of gossip too. I'd like to get to 150,000 within the next little bit. So if you guys want to hit that subscribe button, that would be fantastic. I would love to have you back. In addition to covering Harry and Meghan, I do other royals as well. I also have a weekly newsletter, Royal Wire, and I have a fashion channel. So if you want to know more of the details about this whole Dior thing, I actually have two videos on it there. One of them covers basically when Harry and Meghan, just even a couple months ago, were floating this brand idea around. And then the second one compares Meghan Markle and her style against Beatrice Borromeo, who is an Italian aristocrat. She married Pierre Cazzaraghi, who is the son of Princess Caroline of Monaco. So yes, that does make him Grace Kelly's grandson. And they are actually both Dior brand ambassadors, and I think are 1,000 times better than Harry and Meghan. And although Harry and Meghan keep trying to manifest this deal, I am trying to, and I won't say manifest because I'm not a fan of the term, but I'm trying to introduce people to two stylish royals who have a long treasured history. Beatrice's family goes back centuries. She even has a saint in her lineage. So she is from a very, you could say, well-bred stock. And I think she exemplifies the Dior brand very, very well because she has a timeless, classic elegance, which Meghan Markle lacks, which means Meghan Markle would be a terrible representative of Dior. And just real quick as well, I do have an upcoming trip to Germany and Austria, so if you want to chat with me, we just only have a couple weeks till it closes, so if you want to check out some of the amazing sites in Munich, Bavaria, and Salzburg and Vienna, I would love to have you come along. So details are in the description box down below, along to links to a whole bunch of other things if you want to check those out. And before we talk about Harry and Meghan, number one, the story about the Titanic. I am fascinated by that. There's obviously a tourist submarine that went down there to view the Titanic because there is a company that does that. Apparently, they've lost contact with it. And what's interesting too is that they lost contact for about 8 hours before they contacted the authorities, which is crazy because you're talking about 12,500 feet under the surface of the ocean. So they are incredibly deep down there. It is a very, very dire situation. And apparently Charles has asked to be well informed because one of the members who is on the team is a British billionaire and he happens to be a donor to the Prince's Trust, which is Charles's charity that he's had for a number of years. So this remains a very harrowing story in many ways. If you've never done any bit of research about the crushing pressure of the ocean at that depth, if something went wrong, there's really not much anybody can do, especially when you're getting thousands and thousands of feet under the ocean. The only, I think, successful rescue of a a submersible. The lowest depth was about, I think, 1,600 feet, and you're talking about 10 times that. So if they are on the bottom of the ocean, things aren't looking too good for them. So yeah, so hopefully prayers for all those involved. We also have the Order of the Garter Day yesterday. Catherine and William were both there, in addition to the King and Queen, and Princess Anne and Prince Edward and Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. So they all looked absolutely fabulous. And although I will have to say, one of my favorite looks of Catherine's of all time was her Order of the Garter look last year. I wasn't as much a fan of this one because I do not like Alessandra Riche, but it was interesting to see Catherine utilize a darker lip shade. So we're seeing these subtle little hints of how things are changing, because she wore nail polish to Easter service. It was a dark red, and now we have the darker lip color, which I think is a signifying of how things are slowly loosening up post the Queen's death. And she also, Catherine today, also opened up the National Portrait Gallery after a 3-year refurbishment. She was wearing self-portrait, and I've seen that dress. They just had a recent sale on self-portrait, so I may or may not get something from there. And so I do love their style. It's very classically elegant, although sometimes it can be a little fussy. It just depends on what you get. So that was really exciting to see. And then we also have a tiara appearance in Belgium, because the King and Queen of the Netherlands are on, I'm not sure if it's a state or official visit. But anyways, Maxima once again busted out the House Diamonds, also known as the Stuart tiara without the Stuart diamond. And she looked absolutely fabulous. And her counterpart, Queen Matilda of Belgium, was wearing, I think, her 9 Provence's tiara, which looked also, it's her grandest. So they really did bust out all the chops. And I love how the dresses, especially Matilda's, is just kind of flowing over the floor. There's just something magical about that, isn't there? And unfortunately, the magic does not extend to Meghan Markle. Meghan made the huge and catastrophic mistake, because really I think a lot of this comes back to Meghan and her lack of understanding about what it means to be royal and within a royal family. Because when it comes to being a royal, you have this very weird place you're in, because you are a celebrity and you're not. You're a diplomat, but you're not, because you can't really make, you could say, huge decisions. You're a state representative, even though you're not, because you're not doing anything official in terms of, again, making huge changing decisions to a country. But there is something magical about being a royal, because you get to wear tiaras and jewelry and gowns, things that you don't see every day. I think even the Oscars has been, I see it a lot, and I go, ugh, I don't feel like it was as grand as it once was. And when I want grandeur, I think of royals, I think of castles and palaces, and the grandness of being part of an ancient aristocratic heritage. And Meghan thought that all these pieces could be transplanted to Hollywood, no big problem. That she was essentially, she came into the royal family and she was the magic. It wasn't the crown that added the magic, it was her. I made this analogy, and it's been a bit for those of you who are new, is that royal families essentially work like this, is that the crown is the actual sun. So it's not the monarch, it's the crown. The crown, the shine of the crown, though, is better for you the closer you are to the crown. So the crown is the sun, then the next planet would be Mercury, so that would be Charles, and then if Mercury had a moon, that would be Camilla, then you had Catherine and William, and it would be Venus, and the moons of Venus, and then Harry and Meghan, you could say right now, are in the outer atmosphere, because unfortunately the power and the majesty and the shine of the crown only extends if you are actually in the family. The further you are away from it, the less it shines on you. And Meghan Markle, when she decided to initiate Brexit, because I truly believe it was her idea, she was manipulating Harry, going, okay, I'm not happy and I won't be happy until I can be in Hollywood, because otherwise the press is never going to end. Of course, you could also say it's been 3 years. Has the press gotten any better for the two of you? No, it has not. So it was an epic failure for this move, because this move didn't change anything except for actually make people like you less. And so she decided to initiate this move, and you got to give it to her. She had Hollywood at her feet, and I understand why. There was a curiosity factor. Ooh, a royal has left. She was a part of Hollywood, but not really. And they all knew she was a terrible actress, because I'm sure many of them were like, oh, okay, let's watch our things. And they were like, oh yeah, I understand why now you were in Toronto on the set of Suits and didn't actually happen. You were more of an influencer than an actor. I see it now. I think they all sort of knew that. And so they debated to themselves, and they decided, okay, well, you know what, let's give her a chance, because she's been in the royal family, and particularly what they really wanted was the dirt, because palaces, regardless of what country, are pretty cloistered, and the aristocratic circles that surround them are pretty cloistered. They tend not to share about each other. They tend to keep each other's confidences. And I think Hollywood smelled blood in the water and knew Meghan Markle would flip on a dime and if it benefited her. And I'm sure that was a huge reason why they got these massive deals. Is they're like, okay, give us the behind the scenes. What was it like in the royal family? And signing those deals at the time made sense. And when I first initially heard about them, I was like, oh, it's not fair. They don't deserve them. But I'm like, oh, fine, whatever. Hollywood can make its mistake. And I think Hollywood is realizing that, yes, they made a pretty catastrophic error here, because they assumed, like so many people, that Meghan Markle actually knew what she was doing. They assumed that she had an idea of how to not only leverage her time within the royal family, but create content. I create content. I do it all the time. It's not always easy, but it's not bad either. And you can create a lot of content, especially if you have a team around you. I sometimes struggle with content just because of the time it takes to actually finish editing a video, getting a video set up. You got to do your makeup, you got to do your hair, you got to do all these sorts of things. Obviously, I put my hair up today, but I actually had to go. I'm actually in a hotel, and I had to go get some mascara because I forgot my mascara. So there's all different things that go into these videos, things that Meghan Markle doesn't have to worry about. And I think Hollywood's like, okay, well, if we give her a certain amount of money, she should be able to produce a lot of content for us, not only in addition to her royal stuff, but she has a good idea here or there. Let's see what she can do with it. And you know what she did with it? Nothing. And it took them way too long to come out with content. Remember when Harry and Meghan came out with their first podcast episode? I remember thinking, man alive. A, I didn't really listen to much of it. And B, it's like, that was the laziest thing you could possibly do, because what they did is had other people record their time during the pandemic and send it into them. They didn't create any content. They brought together other people's content and added a bit of intro and exits and transitions. That's all they did. And as it turns out, that has been their MO the entire time. And Spotify in particular wasn't super happy about it, because they paid Harry and Meghan for content. And with the 2.5 years they had a deal with Spotify, they created one single series that was 12 episodes with, I think, maybe a trailer, and one episode and trailer of a weird holiday special. That's all they did. I put the numbers together, and at least per episode, that's $1.5 million that technically Spotify could have spent per episode in 2.5 years. I actually did the math wrong initially, and I was like, it came out to 150. I'm like, well, that's not bad. That makes sense. It's a higher profile podcast. I mean, it's still a lot though. I don't feel like a podcast should cost that much unless you are hiring the super highest people you possibly could. And Spotify thought the same way. And so Spotify dropped them. And then you have Netflix. Again, that deal could be upwards of $100 million. And while they did get one smash hit series out of it, the next thing Harry and Meghan did for them completely and utterly flopped. And now they have one more thing that may come off the ground. But there's super big questions of if they'll continue with it. And then you also have obviously the publishing deal. We have Harry's memoir, which did really well. Meghan's the book, The Bench, did not do that well. And so far, basically what Harry and Meghan have established is that the only thing they can sell about themselves so far is their time within the royal family. But Meghan Markle was only there a little over 1.5 years. So how much could she really say anymore? And I think that's what Spotify and the rest of them are worried about. It's like, we paid you for X, and the rest of your ideas are not really working out, because Meghan Markle was desperate to sell Archetype Season 2, and Spotify wasn't biting. Now, it could be related to cost, it could be related to creative differences, but I think the catalyst is that Spotify was like, this didn't do insanely well. We want to drop this, and we want you to create something else. And Meghan Markle was like, no, this was so important. We have to continue Archetypes, because she's still trying to sell it. And I think people are telling her no. So I think Harry and Meghan, when you look at this whole debacle of their crumbling, cratering empire, is that they believed that they really didn't have to do any work. They are the two of the laziest Duke and Duchesses around because they expected to get everything for free. And they expected not to have to put in any work and have everybody fawn at their feet. But that's not how real businesses work. You need to have results. And you could say in royals, I know in certain royal circles, people complain about Crown Prince Frederick, Crown Princess Mary, Crown Princess Mary. There's complaints about royals where they say, well, they don't think they work as much as they should. But there's a difference there because royals at the same time, they are somewhat grandfathered in and they do have the opportunity to, let's say, not do as much work as they should. But when you're singing for your supper, when your life must be that you must produce content in order to eat, you can't sit on your behind, take a 6-month maternity leave when you have a house full of nannies and a housekeeper and just say, well, we're not going to do anything for 6 months because, oh, we have a baby, even though they have a ton of help. Oh, we can't do it. We have a baby. And I think they use that excuse. And I think Spotify was like, yeah, that's not an excuse. We have sympathy for that, sure, but that's not an excuse because a podcast is something you can do from your home. And as it turns out as well is that another story has been recirculated, and that's the fact that Meghan did not interview really anybody for her podcast but the celebrities. She let her producers do the rest of the interviews, and then she would technically ask the question. That's not difficult to do. I edit all the time. It is really easy to slip in something real quick, especially if I misspoke or something and I have to add in additional copy. I basically put a picture over it and re-record and slap it in there and it does just fine. I know that probably burst some people's bubble, but it's not hard. And if you were doing a high volume podcast, let's say you're doing something every single day, I can understand having your producer do some of the interviews because you just have so much to do because this podcast is every single day. But what this screams to me is how exceptionally lazy Meghan is. She produced 12 episodes in 2.5 years, and she still had to have her producer interview somebody else. And what you got with Meghan's podcast is not something that was organic. It was something very manufactured, very, you could say almost fragmented, because they had to Frankenstein it together because Meghan would do her interview with celebrities and then they'd have to, oh, we need to do an out to talk to a professional about such and such. And it's like, well, did anybody really care? What if we had the three of you guys doing a round table together? But Meghan Markle was also a terrible interviewer. She couldn't interview well and she talked about herself constantly. Everything had to be brought back to Meghan. She talked about herself endlessly. And I'm sure some of the guests, perhaps you could even say, maybe complained about it. Because she's not, again, this is not her forte. She can't talk about anything but herself. She needs a shallow podcast where she can talk about her love of travel, food, Tiganello wine, whatever. That's what she needed. She didn't need to talk about existential or bigger issues because she's really at the heart of hearts, not a bigger issue person. She's a vain, vapid, and shallow person. And it came through in her podcast. And I think Spotify picked up on that. And they're like, you know what? Unless you're doing something different, we really can't fund this needless podcast again because we're paying a lot of money for not a lot in return. And you're not Joe Rogan. You're not doing 3 podcasts a week. You're not even doing one every week of the year except for taking breaks here and there. You're doing just a small season of one and then you're stopping. Now that makes sense if you're doing, let's say, a story and the story naturally comes to a conclusion. But if that's not the case, if you're talking about something bigger and greater like Meghan supposedly is, why not keep going? Because a podcast, again, you can film it in your pajamas if you want to. Now, if there's a video component, that could be a factor in as well. But Meghan Markle had the simplest layup in the world, which is to create a podcast. Again, it's still hard, but it's not that hard. That she failed to even produce enough episodes for really to make it Spotify worth it is very glaring. Even if it was quote unquote #1, which we all know is a lie because the highest Meghan Markle's episodes got, and maybe one got to maybe 6 in the top episodes, but it was usually 9 and then started getting way below in the teens and then the 20s. The ones that were always on top were always Joe Rogan's. So Meghan Markle's podcast could have never been in the top spot, the #1 in the world, because her episodes were never ever one in the world. So how could they be outbeating 3 of Joe Rogan's episodes with just 1 episode? That's impossible. So we know that Spotify was artificially propping up archetypes, which perhaps gave Meghan a big head, and then she paid for these awards. And I think she was trying to leverage those awards in order to get Spotify to sign on to Archetype Season 2. And they're like, we don't care about the awards. we're looking at the analytics, and the analytics don't lie. And you could say perhaps Meghan and her team, they do. And so as Meghan was trying to, you could say, manifest this, it collapsed on her because she didn't have the evidence to back it up. Now it comes to Dior, Christian Dior. Meghan has been obsessed with Dior. Tom Bauer told us that she actually did something where she went to an event and she wanted the best suite in the hotel, and she wanted a Christian Dior bathrobe that she could steal, basically. She wanted them to pay for a Christian Dior bathrobe that would be hers after it was done. And I can't remember if they went through with that or not. She also thought that there would be a ton of paparazzi outside the hotel, and there were obviously not. I don't think anybody was ever there because they're like, nobody knows who you are, honey. But Meghan has been trying for a while, I think, to get Christian Dior to adopt her as a brand ambassador of some sort. We've obviously seen Harry wear a lot of their stuff. Meghan Markle has worn a lot of their stuff to big events. However, Christian Dior basically was like, no, not anymore. You keep trying to float these ideas in the press, hoping something happens. But now, instead of people just letting things lie, they become so toxic that people are pushing back. Here's what Christian Dior, or somebody with Meghan's team, told The Telegraph. The Duchess of Sussex is not in talks to sign a deal with Dior. There is no truth to the claims, as she will partner with the French fashion house. A Dior insider said its team was nonplussed about how the story came about. Well, I can tell you, Dior, if you're wondering about the mystery, it was Meghan Markle, which I'm sure you're aware that she was trying to get this deal, trying to float this idea, and it's not working. So this was Meghan's problem number 2, is that she was constantly floating ideas hoping they would happen. And sometimes they did. She got mega deals. She got all these opportunities. However, at some point that was going to hit a wall, because again, you need to have actual results. You can't just say time and time again, well, I'm great, you should sign up. Look at me, look how great I am. We still have more stories being floated around about how she's going to become a politician. Like, we know Dianne Feinstein, who's the senator from California, she is very, very frail. Many think she is actually at the point where she is mentally unable to serve as a senator. And Meghan, you could say, is leveraging. Look, she's dressing like Michelle Obama. Oh my gosh, she should be a politician. But I don't think anybody's buying that. Nobody is interested in that anymore. But that's what Meghan's deal has been, is that she's thought if she puts enough positive news out there, or news that she wants to see, that somebody will go ahead and they'll go, well, okay. Because we even had all these stories when they initially started, Harry and Meghan, that they would create this billion-dollar media empire. And the only one sitting on a billion-dollar empire right now, technically you could say, is Prince William with the Duchy of Cornwall. It's not Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, because actually their empire is coming to an end. Not only will they not get the deals they used to, I think people are more interested in dropping them. Dior wanted distance from Harry and Meghan. Make no mistake, them saying they're nonplussed, they don't know why this is happening, is they're basically saying to Harry and Meghan, stop involving us in it. This is not going to happen. Please go away. And it's interesting as well to consider that Queen Camilla, I guess, wore a Dior outfit at the recent Ascot races. And obviously, who do you want to dress? A duchess in California who only has one successful project to her name? Or do you want to dress the Queen of England? I think we all know what Dior actually wants to do, which is dress the Queen of England. And we also had celebrities come out and speak out against Harry and Meghan, because their protection within the industry itself is basically dead. So we also had Bill Simmons, which I spoke of in my last video. We also have Kelly Osbourne. So okay, take a listen to this brief little bit here.
I think he's a whining, whinging, complaining, woe is me, I'm the only one that's ever had mental problems, my life was so hard. Everybody's life is hard.
So Kelly is pulling no punches. Everybody is tired of Harry and Meghan's whining and their victim narrative. This was mistake number 3 for them. And I think the one that at the end of the day really will crater them. And that's their belief that they are victims, that they've created this victim narrative around themselves. And that if you don't believe the victim narrative, then you are racist, sexist, whatever. You should see some of the nasty comments I get on Twitter sometimes, because the Sussex stands are having a little bit of a meltdown over this. They're really having a meltdown, as it's become clear that this person that they propped up for years and years is basically not not only are they not who they thought they were, they're not going to become who they thought they were going to become. And this victim narrative, I think, is at the heart of it, because we're Americans here in this country. And I don't know about the UK, but I appreciate, I think so many Americans appreciate people who pull themselves up by their bootstraps, put on a happy, not necessarily a happy face, but put on a strong face. And you know what? I'm going to face adversity. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to be stronger. And what do Harry and Meghan do? People who literally live in palaces, literally had the world at their feet. They're complaining endlessly, constantly complaining about their lot in life. That is not good. Nobody was ever good enough. People didn't do what they wanted them to do. And I think the public at large was kind of like, well, I appreciate that you had maybe some difficulties. And I think there was a lot of sympathy during the first Oprah Winfrey interview. But after that, people were like, you know what? There's other people in the world suffering far greater than you could ever hope to believe. And they are getting through this without complaining, and you are the one here whining, dragging your feet, telling us all how terrible and horrible it is while living in your $14 million mansion. And again, people had a bit of sympathy to begin with, but that sympathy has basically been erased by Harry and Meghan's own incessant whining. They incessantly whine about things. And even when tragedy does strike, they make it about them. Why in the world did Meghan travel 3,000 miles to Uvalde, Texas, to very, very publicly? This wasn't done under the radar. She took a private jet. She, in front of news cameras, put in a very pathetic bouquet of flowers in front of a grave, and in a hat with her hair like matted, looking awful, and jeans. She looked terrible. Parading around, she knew the cameras knew she was there. Don't tell me she didn't know that. And don't tell me that if you really cared, you could have just given your flower bouquet to your staff member. They could have laid it and then you could have left. It doesn't matter really if you do it. So it came across as a publicity stunt. A woman who has all the luxuries in the world, has her children, is going to a place where parents have lost children to cause attention, to bring attention to herself. People are sick of that. And that was over a year ago. And at this point, nobody cares anymore about the supposed suffering of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And if they don't change direction soon, like immediately, it's not going to get any better for them. Because even though Meghan is supposedly trying to get out of this hole that she and Harry have dug, I don't think she totally can. I think she'll still portray herself as the victim. Harry's going down this path with his court cases. And it's been suggested, and I think it's true, that publicly they're kind of divorced in terms of their strategies and their overall ambitions now. They had the one project together, which was Netflix. But now I think they're going in radically different directions. Harry is going through all his legal cases, while Meghan signed with WME, William Morrison Endeavor, and I think is trying to make the influencer thing work for her again. Because this is another thing she's put out there, hoping to manifest, is she'll be the most powerful influencer in the world. But I can't see how anybody's that interested in buying things from Meghan Markle. And isn't it a huge downgrade to shill to the public your wares and just go, oh, buy this, when you were once serving people, not doing things to be served and to profit, but doing things to serve others. And honestly, the real influencer route, the niece of the King of the Netherlands, she's a countess, she's an influencer. And I hate to say this, but she's I don't think really attractive enough to be an influencer. So I don't think her stuff is going to do all that well, but she's desperate for attention, because that's what influencing comes off as, people desperate for attention sometimes who just don't have anything else to say, anything meaningful to add. Now, that's not always the case. I think a lot of people are fun to watch. I have some influencers I follow on Instagram, and I think there is something for that. However, I think Meghan Markle wants us to believe she's a deep person. And perhaps this is my fourth point, is that Meghan Markle made the huge mistake of trying to make herself sound more intellectual, more charitable than she actually is. At the heart of hearts, Meghan is a shallow person. She cares about image. She cares about how people see her. She doesn't want to do anything to, let's say, make herself better. She wants you just to believe that she is as great as she thinks she is. So she's shallow, she's vain, she's vapid. And she tries to mask all of that by saying, oh, archetypes is about changing the conversation surrounding women. Has it done that at all? No. Has it changed the conversation around Meghan? Yeah. Has it helped anybody associated with it? Really? No. Most of the people who helped Meghan create it have left. Now Spotify has left. Meghan should have stuck to her lane, which is an influencer, which is somebody who talks about and does all those contorted poses trying to be sexy for her Instagram profile. Because at the heart of hearts, that's what Meghan is. She is an influencer, not even, you could say, a good influencer, somebody who tries to add value to the greater public. No, she is somebody who cares only about herself. It's a vanity project. That's what she needs. And so Harry's and Meghan's supposed media empire was always going to collapse. There's nothing else it could have done because Harry and Meghan have made it so it can't do anything else. And so as they go on these next ventures, it'll be fascinating to see if their relationship lasts the separation, the professional divorce that they're going through. Will their marriage last, or is this another step towards divorce? Because once you start divorcing professionally, people who said that, oh, we have basically side-by-side chairs in our offices, we do everything together, we're like salt and pepper. A personal divorce isn't far behind. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Prayers for those who are stuck underneath the ocean there with that Titanic submarine. I think that's still a horrific story. So guys, thank you again for watching. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.